Hello, champions. Welcome to this session. And in this session, what we are going to do is we are going to take a look at metadata, which means data about data. So let's quickly get into the labs. I'll quickly share my screen. Let's understand first what is metadata. So do you see I've got this Linux instance created. I want you to quickly create this Linux instance the way we created. Again, I want you to pass the user data commands as well, those 4 line of commands. Okay. So whatever details you can see here, for example, this public IP, instance ID, private IP address, whatever you see on the UI, you should be able to see this on the CLI as well. Okay. So that is what is metadata, which means data about data, which means more details about this web server. Okay, Linux instance. So now, before we go into metadata, the thing is earlier defaultly you could run the metadata command on your Linux instance, but today you cannot run. You have to enable the metadata command line thing. How to enable that? Before we enable that, let me show you what happens if you do not enable. What is the error that you see? So I want quickly you guys to log into your Linux box. Once you log in, you would see this kind of interface. But here are the Linux commands or the metadata commands that I want you to run. Perl space HTTP and 169.254, 169.254. This IP remains the same, whichever Linux you run on. I want you to check for these commands in the comment below. You will see all this command ready-made. All you have to do is copy paste. So let's run this and see what is the error that we get. Okay, because since the metadata is not enabled, ideally we would not be able to run this command in the latest UI console. Okay, so if I say enter, you can see you'll get this message as unauthorized. So the first option that you have to do is to enable metadata. How to enable that? So you will select your instance, you go on action items, you go to instance settings, you go to the last option under instance setting, that is modify instance metadata options. Once you click on this, you can see this option. So metadata service is enabled, but this IMDS version 2, this optional, this says required. Now, when we say required, it does not allow us to run metadata command. We have to select optional. We say save. Okay. Now, once we say save, this is the settings that we should have to run our metadata command. So let's quickly run the metadata commands. So I quickly go back on my screen. Now I scroll up and I run the same command once again. And you see, voila, we are able to run the same command. Okay, but let's see what we are able to see with this command. So under this command, you can see under metadata, I have various options to check MEID, to check public IPv4. So let's quickly check few of the options. So let's check the MEID of this instance. So if at all I want to check which ME is this instance created from. So I'll copy this command. Let me clear the screen. Okay, I'll copy and paste. Okay, once I say MEID, you can see this is the MEID that it says this is created from. Let me go and check this in the UI. So the MEID ends with 260C6. So if I go back to the UI, if I scroll this down, I need to check for MEID, and you can see MEID in the UI, it's the same, like 260C6. So we are good. Let's check the public IP. Okay, so let's say if I want to verify the public IP from the CLI. So what I'll do is if I'm not sure, I'll come back, I'll fire the command until metadata, and it will show me all the options. But here's the public public-IPv4. So in the entire command, I'll say slash and I'll press public IPv4. I say enter. And you can see here I get my public IP, which is 3.90.42.108. And if I come back to UI, it's the same. Again, you don't need to check this, like, hunt this for this command. The command is ready-made, is there in the comment section for you. I want you to copy there. If at all I want to check the instance ID, so I'll go back to the console and clear my screen again so that you can see the things properly. And once I enter this, I'm able to check the instance ID. This is the instance ID, the one that ends with B9723. So if I come back to this, you can see B9723, which is my instance ID. Lastly, let's quickly check the user data. You remember we always create our instance with the user data thing. So if I quickly copy this public IP, and assuming that in the security group port it is already enabled, this is the page that I can see. So what is the user data? I'm excited to check that. So let's run this command. So instead of metadata, all you have to type is user-data. Okay. So HTTP 169.254/latest/user data. Okay. Remember 169.254 is twice. So I'll come here, I'll say paste this command, I press enter, and you see this is a metadata or the user data that I had put. Okay. And that is why we are able to see the same web page. We're able to see a web page saying, welcome to Cloud Champions Club. And if I go back to this UI, that's what I see. So that is what we had in this session quickly, how to check metadata, that's data about data or more data about your instance. So I wanted to do this, run this commands quickly, and I'll see you in the next session. Cheers.